Kira Ashford had killed 17 men before her 21st birthday. She remembered each of them with the detachment of a craftsman cataloging completed work. The guard captain in Westmarch, who liked to beat serving girls. The duke's cousin, who sold children to slavers. The merchant prince who poisoned his own brother for an inheritance. Each death had been clean, professional, and utterly without emotion. Master Corvinus would have been proud. Tonight would be her 18th kill. She moved through the shadows of Blackstone Keep like smoke through a cracked window, her soft-soled boots making no sound on the ancient stone. 3 weeks of preparation had brought her to this moment. 3 weeks of scrubbing floors and carrying water and enduring the casual cruelties of castle life as just another unremarkable servant. The Alpha King's household employed over 200 staff, and one more plain-faced girl went entirely unnoticed. The corridor ahead stretched empty, lit only by dying torchlight. 2 guards stood at the far end, but their attention was fixed outward, watching for threats from beyond the castle walls. They never considered that the danger might already be inside, wearing a servant's rough-spun dress and carrying a poisoned blade against her thigh. Kira pressed herself into an alcove and waited for the guard rotation. Her breathing stayed even, her heartbeat steady as a war drum's cadence. This was what she had been made for. 18 years of training with the Crimson Veil, transforming her from a grieving orphan into the deadliest weapon in Master Corvinus's arsenal. She did not feel anticipation or fear or doubt. She felt only the perfect focus that preceded every kill. The guards moved on. She slipped forward. The Alpha King's private chambers lay at the end of the eastern tower, protected by locks that would have stopped any ordinary intruder. Kira was not ordinary. She produced a set of picks from the hidden pocket in her sleeve and worked the mechanism with the delicate precision of a surgeon. 7 seconds. The lock yielded with a soft click. She eased the door open and stepped inside. Fire burned low in the massive hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls hung with war banners. Weapons mounted above the mantel gleamed in the flickering light. Ancient swords, a battle axe with a notched blade, a spear said to have killed a rival alpha 3 generations past. The room smelled of wood smoke and ink, and the lingering scent of a man who spent his days surrounded by leather and steel. Kieran Voss sat at his desk with his back to the door, bent over documents that held his attention completely. Candlelight illuminated the silver threading through his black hair, the breadth of his shoulders, the scar that crossed his left eye. He wore no armor, only a simple tunic, and his sword lay across the desk just out of immediate reach. Trusting, vulnerable, already dead, though he did not know it yet. Kira drew her blade and began her approach. 3 steps would close the distance. 1 strike across the throat would end the Voss bloodline and complete the mission that had consumed the Crimson Veil for 40 years. She would be back in the shadows before his body hit the floor. She was 2 steps away when her stomach revolted. The nausea struck without warning, a violent surge that buckled her knees and closed her throat. Pregnancy sickness had plagued her for weeks now, but never like this. Never with such brutal timing. She stumbled sideways and her hip caught the edge of a side table. A silver goblet crashed to the floor with a sound that shattered the silence like breaking glass. The Alpha King moved faster than any man his size should have been able to move. He was on his feet and spinning before the goblet stopped rolling, a blade appearing in his hand as if conjured from nothing. His gold eyes locked onto her with the predatory focus of the apex predator he was. Kira recovered and attacked, knowing that surprise was lost but speed might still save her. Her poison blade slashed toward his throat. He caught her wrist and twisted, deflecting the strike. And suddenly, they were fighting through the chamber in a whirlwind of violence that sent furniture crashing and candles scattering. He was stronger. So much stronger. But she was faster, and she knew techniques that guards and soldiers never learned. She slipped under his reach and scored a cut across his forearm that drew blood. He snarled and pressed forward, forcing her back against the wall. She ducked a blow that would have crushed her skull and drove her elbow into his ribs. He grunted but did not slow. Then his hand closed around her throat and lifted her off her feet. Kira's back hit the cold stone wall. The Alpha King pinned her there with one hand while the other pressed a blade to her stomach. His face was inches from hers, close enough that she could see the individual threads of gold in his irises, close enough to smell the wine on his breath and the leather of his tunic. His grip tightened, and her vision began to darken at the edges. This was how it ended then. She had failed. Master Corvinus would be disappointed, but she would not be alive to see it. There was something almost like relief in that thought. The Alpha King's eyes dropped to where her free hand had moved, not to strike at him, but to press protectively against her stomach. A reflexive gesture she had not meant to make. His gaze traveled down, taking in the slight curve beneath her servant's dress that her loose clothing had concealed. His grip loosened. "You're carrying," he said. Not a question. Kira said nothing. She would not give him anything, not information, not confirmation, not the satisfaction of her fear. The door burst open and guards flooded in with torches blazing, followed by an older man with silver hair and the bearing of a lifelong warrior. "My king, are you injured?" "I am fine, Marcus." Kieran's voice was steady despite the blood dripping from his forearm. "We have a guest." "That's the Crimson Veil's mark." The old soldier had spotted the small tattoo on Kira's wrist, exposed when her sleeve rode up during the fight. "An assassin. Execute her now, before she can try again." Kieran did not move. His gold eyes remained fixed on Kira's face, on the defiance she wore like armor, on the fear she could not quite hide beneath it. His hand was still around her throat, but the killing pressure had eased. "No," he said finally, "not tonight. Chain her and take her to the tower. She will be questioned in the morning." Marcus made a sound of outrage. "My king, she came to kill you. The guild has murdered 3 of our commanders in the past year alone. Justice demands. Justice can wait." Kieran released Kira's throat and stepped back. His expression had shifted into something she could not read, something that made her more uneasy than his rage had. "There will be no execution tonight." The guards chained her wrists and dragged her from the chamber. The last thing she saw before they pulled her through the door was the Alpha King standing amid the wreckage of their fight. One hand pressed to his bleeding arm, watching her with eyes that held no anger at all. Only something that looked, impossibly, like recognition, as if her face reminded him of something, or someone, he could not quite place. The tower cell was not a dungeon. This was the first thing Kira noticed when the guards threw her inside and locked the door behind them. A narrow bed with actual blankets, a writing desk and chair, a window, barred but letting in morning light, and a view of snow-covered mountains. Not comfort, exactly, but not the dark pit she had expected. She spent the first night waiting for death. It did not come. She spent the second day testing her chains and cataloging escape routes. The window bars were too strong to break. The door was solid oak reinforced with iron. The guards changed shifts every 4 hours and never came alone. Escaping would be difficult, but not impossible, given time. On the 3rd morning, the Alpha King came to see her. He entered without ceremony, dismissing the guards with a gesture and pulling the single chair to face her bed where she sat against the wall. Up close and in daylight she could see the lines that marked his face, the weight of years and war and responsibility carved into features that might once have been handsome. The cut on his arm had been bandaged but not yet healed. "Your name," he said. Not a question, a command. "Does it matter? You'll kill me regardless." "If I meant to kill you, you would already be dead." He studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. She did not. "Your name." She considered lying, decided there was no point. "Kira." Kira Ashford. The name felt strange on her tongue. She had not spoken it aloud in 18 years. Within the veil she had been shade, then shadow, then simply the weapon. Her true name had been buried so deep that even she had nearly forgotten it. The village destroyed by rogues 18 years ago. You were one of the survivors. Kira's jaw tightened. There were no survivors, just bodies and a few orphans young enough to be taken and trained. She let the bitterness show, let him see exactly what she was. The Crimson Veil collected me when I was 7. They erased my name, my past, everything. I've been theirs ever since. And the child? Her hand moved to her stomach again, that same protective reflex she could not seem to control. What about it? The father? The question brought back memories she had tried to bury. Demon had been one of Corvinus's senior operatives, a man with silver tongue and darker intentions. One of Corvinus's inner circle, a man named Demon Blackwell. He was supposed to be training me for this mission, but he had other plans. Her voice hardened. He reported everything to Corvinus. My progress, my weaknesses, my growing attachment to him. It was all part of the plan. Get me pregnant, make me vulnerable, then use the child as leverage to ensure I completed my mission. He manipulated you. He was Corvinus's instrument, just as I was supposed to be. She met Kieran's eyes without flinching. When I realized the truth, I killed him. That was 3 months ago. The healers say the child will be born without a wolf. Human. A vulnerability in a world of predators, they called it. Something shifted in Kieran's expression. A flicker of old pain surfacing before being pushed back down. You should have told me sooner. When I had you pinned. Would it have changed anything? It did change things. He leaned back in the chair, watching her. I should have killed you the moment I realized what you were. My commanders are right about that. But I cannot kill an unborn child for its mother's crimes. I cannot. He stopped, started again. I will not. Kira laughed, though nothing was funny. So you'll wait until I give birth and then execute me? How merciful. I haven't decided what I'll do with you. He stood, moving toward the window to look out at the mountains. The child will be protected. That much is certain. What happens to you depends on what you can offer me. I won't betray the Crimson Veil. We'll see. He did not turn around. You'll have regular meals, a healer to monitor your pregnancy, and supervised walks for your health. In exchange, you will not try to kill anyone else in my household. I trust we understand each other. He left before she could respond. The lock clicked shut behind him, leaving Kira alone with questions she had no answers for and a mercy she could not understand. The weeks that followed established a pattern Kira did not know how to break. She was a prisoner, but a well-treated one. The food was substantial, not prison slop. The healer who visited her weekly was gentle and thorough, genuinely concerned for her health rather than just keeping her alive for punishment. Her guards were professional rather than cruel. When they took her for walks through the castle's inner courtyards, they let her set her own pace. She used every moment to catalog the castle's defenses, mapping guard rotations and weak points out of pure instinct. An assassin never stopped observing, but the more she observed, the more confused she became. The servants she saw did not move like people who lived in fear. They laughed in the corridors, gossiped freely, greeted the Alpha King by name when he passed. His soldiers trained hard, but without the brutal edge she knew from the Crimson Veil's barracks. She watched Kieran spar with his men in the courtyard below her window, and he fought without pulling rank, accepting hits he could have avoided, praising technique instead of punishing failure. None of this matched the monster she had been sent to kill. Master Corvinus had taught her everything she knew about the Voss bloodline, tyrants who had ruled the northern territories with iron cruelty for generations, killers who slaughtered innocent packs to expand their territory. The current king was the worst of them, Corvinus said, a wolf who had drowned the borderlands in blood during his rise to power. But the man Kira watched from her window smiled when his soldiers' children ran onto the training grounds. He stopped to speak with an elderly servant struggling to carry a heavy load, and when Kira looked again, one of his guards was helping instead. He ruled a kingdom that should have cowered before him, and instead it seemed to thrive. She told herself it was an act, a performance for her benefit, designed to confuse and manipulate. That was what men in power did. That was what Master Corvinus had taught her. But Corvinus had also taught her to read people, and she could not find the lie. The attack came without warning on a cold night 3 weeks into her captivity. Kira was being escorted back to her cell after an evening walk when she heard the commotion around the corner. Shouts. The clash of steel. A man's scream cut short. Her guards moved to investigate, leaving her momentarily unattended in the corridor. She could run. The thought came instantly, along with a mental map of the route to the nearest unguarded exit. In the chaos, she might actually make it out. Instead, she moved toward the fight. 2 men in servants' clothing had cornered one of Kieran's advisors against the wall, their blades wet with the blood of his guards. The advisor was older, unarmed, moments from death. The attackers moved with the fluid precision of trained killers. Kira recognized the fighting style immediately. Crimson Veil. She acted without thinking. Her hand found the knife on the fallen guard beside her, one of the Veil's victims, and pulled it from his belt in a single fluid motion. The blade left her fingers in a throw so smooth, it felt like breathing. It buried itself in the first attacker's throat before he knew she was there. The second man spun to face her, shock evident even behind his mask. He knew her face. Everyone in the Veil knew her face. She was supposed to be on their side. Kira closed the distance between them before he could recover. She caught his knife hand and twisted, breaking his wrist with a technique she had practiced 10,000 times in the guild's training halls. He screamed and dropped his blade. She kicked his knee out from under him, and when he fell, she was already behind him with her arm around his throat. She could have killed him. It would have been easy. But she did not. The guards arrived seconds later to find her standing over the groaning assassin, breathing hard, surrounded by the evidence of exactly how dangerous she truly was. They stared at her with a mixture of fear and confusion that would have been almost funny under different circumstances. The Alpha King arrived minutes after that. He took in the scene without comment. The dead attacker, the captured one, the grateful advisor pressed against the wall, and Kira in the center of it all, her borrowed blade still wet with blood. "You could have escaped," he said quietly. "The route to the eastern gate was clear." "I know. Why didn't you?" Kira did not have an answer. She had been asking herself the same question since her body moved without her mind's permission, throwing her into a fight that was not hers, protecting a man she should have wanted dead. "I don't know," she admitted. She stopped, shook her head. "I don't know." Kieran was silent for a long moment, his gold eyes searching her face for something she was not sure she could give. Then he gestured to his guards. "Take her back to her quarters. She is not to be chained." The guards looked as confused as Kira felt, but they obeyed. As they led her away, she glanced back to find the Alpha King still watching her. His expression unreadable, but somehow softer than she had ever seen it. Something had changed. She could feel it, even if she did not understand what it meant. They summoned her to his private study 3 days later. Not to her cell, not to the council chamber, but to the room where he worked, surrounded by maps and books and the accumulated weight of ruling a kingdom. A fire roared in the hearth against the mountain cold, and he waited for her beside it, his scarred face cast in flickering orange light. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his own. Not a command this time, an invitation. Kira sat. Her guards had been dismissed at the door. For the first time since her capture, She was alone with him without chains or weapons or the immediate threat of violence. The intimacy of it made her uneasy. "You saved Lord Ashford's life," Kieran began. "He has asked me to convey his gratitude." Kira blinked. "Ashford? That's my surname. The same as my village." Edmund Ashford is one of the few survivors from that massacre. He was away trading goods when the rogues attacked. He lost his entire family that night, including a niece who was never found. Kieran paused meaningfully. "A niece named Kira. He has searched for 18 years, but the Crimson Veil guards its secrets well. Their operatives use code names, never leave the compounds without masks, never speak of their pasts. He had no way to find you." The revelation struck her like a physical blow. "He's my uncle?" "It appears so. He recognized your face the moment you saved him. You look exactly like your mother," he says. The resemblance was unmistakable once he saw you up close. Kieran paused. "That first night, when I had you pinned against the wall, something about your face seemed familiar. I could not place it then. Now I understand. I met your mother once, years ago, at a border treaty signing. You have her eyes." Kira's hands trembled. She had believed her entire family was dead, that she was alone in the world, belonging only to the veil. And now, "I want to offer you a proposition, Kira Ashford," Kieran continued. "Tell me about the Crimson Veil, your master, his operations, his network of assassins. Give me the information I need to dismantle the guild that has been killing my people for years. In exchange, you and your child will have sanctuary in my kingdom when this is over. Not prison, not supervised captivity, a life, and a family that has been searching for you for 18 years. Kira barked a laugh, though it came out broken. "You expect me to betray everything I was raised to believe? I expect nothing. I am asking. And what do you gain beyond intelligence? What is this really about?" For a moment, Kieran did not answer. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence with warmth neither of them seemed to feel. Then he spoke, and his voice was rougher than she had ever heard it. "7 years ago, my wife died in childbirth. Our son died with her. I was away at war when it happened. I came home to find 2 graves instead of a family." He paused, the old grief evident in every line of his face. "I could not protect them. I have carried that failure every day since. When you told me your child would be born human, would be vulnerable in a world that has no mercy for vulnerability, I saw a chance to do what I could not do before, to protect a life instead of failing it." Kira felt something shift in her chest, a crack forming in walls she had spent years building. "That's why you spared me. That is part of it. The other part is simpler. I have no taste for killing pregnant women. Never have. Call it weakness if you like. My commanders certainly do." "It is weakness," she said, but the words had no edge. "In my world, mercy is a flaw that gets people killed. Perhaps I am tired of that world." He met her eyes, and she saw something there that she recognized because she felt it herself. Exhaustion, bone deep, and long carried. "Perhaps I am tired of death being the only answer to every question." She should have argued, should have maintained her hostility, her distance, the armor that had kept her alive for 18 years. Instead, she found herself asking, "What happened to your grandfather? The old Alpha King who started all of this?" Kieran blinked at the change of subject. "He died before I was born, killed in a border skirmish when my father was still young." "Why?" "Master Corvinus says his family was killed by the Voss bloodline, that your grandfather slaughtered his pack, made him watch his wife and children burn. He built the Crimson Veil on revenge against your family." "His family was killed by my grandfather?" Kieran shook his head slowly. "The old records mention a pack that was destroyed during the territorial expansion, yes. Brutal business, from what I've read. But that was before my father was even born. Long before I took the crown. I know. Kira's voice came out quieter than she intended. I'm beginning to understand that the monster I was sent to kill may not actually exist. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of his advisors, a woman with cropped brown hair and burn scars across one side of her face, stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Her amber eyes swept over Kira with professional assessment. Sarah Nighthollow, Kieran said. My spy master. She requested this meeting. The scarred woman closed the door behind her. Hello, Kira. It's been a long time. Kira's blood went cold. She knew that face, though it had been changed by fire. Sarah, you escaped. They said you died trying to flee. I nearly did. Corvinus gave me these scars as a parting gift. Sarah touched her burned cheek with something like dark humor. But I survived. Found my way here. Used everything I knew about the Veil to protect this kingdom from them instead. You turned. I woke up. Sarah moved to the fire, warming her hands, though she did not seem cold. You're starting to wake up too, aren't you? Starting to realize that everything Corvinus taught us was built on a foundation of lies. Kira wanted to deny it. The words would not come. Let me tell you what the old man never did, Sarah continued. The attack on his pack was ordered by Aldrich Voss, Kieran's grandfather. Kieran was not even born yet. His father was a child. This vendetta, this 40-year campaign of assassination and terror, has been aimed at a bloodline for the sins of one dead man. She turned to face Kira fully. Kieran has spent his reign reforming the northern territories, dismantling the slave trade that his grandfather built, protecting weaker packs that would have been absorbed or destroyed under the old ways. He is not his grandfather. He never was. And you were sent to kill him for crimes he did not commit. The words landed like blows. Kira sat frozen in her chair, feeling her entire world rearranging itself around her. Everything she had been told, everything that had justified her training, her kills, her entire life of violence in service to a cause, built on lies, used by a broken old man feeding his pain with blood that could never restore what he had lost. And there's more, Sarah said quietly. Demon Blackwell wasn't just manipulating you on his own initiative. The pregnancy was Corvinus's plan from the beginning. He wanted you vulnerable, dependent, with a child that could be used as leverage. If you had succeeded in killing the king and returned, Corvinus would have taken your baby, raised it as another weapon, just like he raised you. Kira's hand went to her stomach, fury and horror warring in her chest. He planned this? All of it? Every step. Demon reported to him weekly. Corvinus knew about your pregnancy before you did. I have documents, Sarah continued. Records of Kieran's reign, the treaties he signed, the reforms he implemented, and letters we intercepted between Corvinus and Demon, proving everything I've told you. I can show you who Kieran actually is, and who Corvinus actually is, if you're willing to look. Kira looked at Kieran, at the man who had spared her life when he should have taken it, who had offered her sanctuary when he owed her nothing but a blade. She saw the grief he carried for a family he could not save, and she understood now that grief was the only thing he shared with Master Corvinus. The difference was what they had done with it. Show me, she said. Sarah showed her. Hours passed in the castle library, Kira reading by candlelight while Sarah provided context for the documents spread across the table. Trade agreements that protected smaller territories from exploitation. Military campaigns that had been defensive rather than aggressive. A council that included representatives from common packs, not just noble bloodlines. Reforms to inheritance laws that gave protection to human-born members of wolf families. Human-born, like her child would be. He started those reforms 3 years ago, Sarah said quietly. Long before he knew you existed. Long before he had any reason to care about human children in wolf kingdoms. Kira stared at the document in her hands, the official seal of the Alpha King marking a law that would protect her child's rights in a world that had no place for them. Her throat felt tight. "Why did you leave?" she asked. "The veil, I mean. What made you run?" Sarah was silent for a moment. "I was given a target. A woman who had been asking too many questions about the guild's operations. When I found her, she was holding her daughter's hand, walking through a market, buying ribbons for the girl's hair." She paused. "I couldn't do it. I looked at them and I saw what I had never let myself see before. That my targets were people. That I had been killing people for a lie. I ran that night and never looked back." "Do you regret it?" "I regret the ones I killed before I woke up. I will carry them until I die." Sarah's amber eyes held Kira's. "But I do not regret choosing to become something different. That is the one thing Corvinus could never understand. We are not fixed in stone. We can decide to be more than what we were made to be." Kira returned to her chamber as dawn began to gray the sky. She sat on her bed and pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the flutter of movement within. Her child, growing stronger every day. Human in a world of wolves, vulnerable in a kingdom that had just been shown to protect the vulnerable. A child that Corvinus had planned to steal and corrupt, just as he had stolen and corrupted her. She thought about Master Corvinus, the man who had raised her, trained her, called her daughter when she exceeded his expectations. She had loved him once, as much as an orphan could love the man who gave her purpose. But that love had been built on lies. She was not his daughter. She had never been anything but a weapon aimed at a target he could not reach himself. She thought about Kieran, the man she was supposed to kill. The enemy who had shown her more mercy in weeks than her master had shown her in years. He had no reason to protect her, no reason to offer her sanctuary, no reason to treat her as anything but the threat she was. And yet he had. Because he had lost a child once. Because he could not let another be harmed. Because somewhere beneath the scars and the crown and the weight of a kingdom, there was a man who still believed that mercy was not weakness. Her child moved again, stronger this time, and Kira made her decision. She found him in the council chamber the next morning, surrounded by advisors and war maps, and the chaos of running a kingdom. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted, became more alert. "I want to help you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I will tell you everything I know about the Crimson Veil, their locations, their methods, their targets. Everything." Marcus Thane made a sound of disgust. "And we're supposed to trust this?" "She came to kill you, my king. This could be another layer of deception." "It could be," Kira agreed. She looked at Kieran, only at Kieran. "But I give you my word, for whatever that's worth from an assassin. I am done being Corvinus's weapon. I choose to be something else." Kieran studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face seemed to satisfy him. "Then let's begin," he said. The intelligence she provided was extensive. She knew the locations of 3 major Veil compounds, the identities of a dozen sleeper agents in noble households, the routes they used to move weapons and poisons across kingdom borders. She drew maps from memory, identified vulnerabilities in their defenses, explained the hierarchy that kept the organization functioning. Sarah verified what she could. The spy master had her own sources, and piece by piece, Kira's information checked out. The council's suspicions slowly shifted to something that might, eventually, become acceptance. All except Marcus Thane, who watched her with undisguised hostility every time they were in the same room. She understood. She had come to kill his king. Some things could not be forgiven, no matter how much useful information she provided. 2 months passed. Her belly grew visibly now, the child strong and active within her. She had been given more freedom, allowed to move through the castle without constant supervision, even permitted to train with the guards to keep her skills sharp. She was still a prisoner in the technical sense, but it had begun to feel less like captivity and more like cautious integration. She had even met with Lord Edmund Ashford, her uncle, and though the reunion was awkward and tearful, it had given her something she had not possessed since childhood: family. And somewhere in those months, something changed between her and the Alpha King. It started as professional respect. They worked well together, her knowledge complementing his strategy, her understanding of assassination protecting against the threats she knew were coming. She found herself looking forward to their planning sessions, to the way his mind worked, to the dry humor that emerged when he was not being the king. Respect became something else the night he found her on the battlements, unable to sleep, staring out at the mountains she had once crossed as a weapon aimed at his heart. "You should be resting," he said, coming to stand beside her. "The healer says you need more sleep." "The healer says many things." She did not look at him. "Some nights the dreams are worse than the exhaustion." "What do you dream about?" "The ones I killed." She had never admitted that to anyone. Their faces, their last moments. "I remember every single one." He was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "I dream about the ones I could not save, the soldiers who died following my orders, my wife, my son." A pause. "We are more alike than I expected, assassin." She looked at him then, at the way the moonlight carved shadows into his scarred face, at the weight he carried that matched her own. "Kira," she said, "not assassin. Not anymore." Something flickered in his gold eyes. "Kira," he repeated, and her name in his voice sounded different than it had before. Softer, more intimate. She should have stepped back, should have maintained the distance that kept her safe. Instead, she found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by something she did not have a name for yet. Neither of them moved closer, but neither of them moved away. The attack came on the winter solstice, during the great feast that gathered the castle's nobles and warriors in the main hall. Kira had warned them that Corvinus would retaliate, that he would not allow her betrayal to stand unpunished, but she had underestimated his resources and his rage. There were not 7 assassins, as she had predicted. There were 12. They struck from the shadows with coordinated precision, blades finding throats and hearts before anyone could react. Guards fell. Nobles screamed. The great hall became a slaughterhouse in the space of seconds, and at the center of it all, Kira saw the truth. They were here for her and Kieran both. Corvinus wanted them dead together. She fought with everything she had, even knowing the risk. Every instinct screamed at her to protect her belly, to curl around the life growing inside her, and let others handle the violence. But there was no safety to retreat to. Only forward. Only through. Her blades found her former brothers and sisters, cutting through them with the same techniques they had all learned from the same masters. She was pregnant and slower than she had been, forced to guard her midsection in ways that left her vulnerable elsewhere, but she was still one of the finest the Veil had ever produced, and she proved it with every stroke. And beside her, fighting with a ferocity that matched her own, was the Alpha King. They moved together like they had trained for this moment, covering each other's weaknesses, anticipating each other's movements. His massive form shifted between human and wolf as the battle demanded, and she worked around him, protecting his blind spots as he protected hers. It was not love yet, not exactly, but it was something deeper than alliance: trust. Complete and absolute trust, forged in blood and violence, and the desperate need to survive. When the last assassin fell, Kira found herself sitting against a wall with blood on her hands and exhaustion in her bones. Her first conscious thought was for the baby. She pressed her palm against her belly, holding her breath until she felt the reassuring flutter of movement within. Still there. Still alive. Kieran slid down beside her, his arm brushing hers, both of them breathing hard in the aftermath. His eyes went immediately to her hand on her stomach. The child? Moving, she said, and the relief in her voice surprised her. She's okay. He exhaled slowly, tension draining from his shoulders. Only then did she realize how afraid he had been, not for himself, but for them. This is my fault, she said. I brought this down on your house. Corvinus has been trying to kill me for years. You just gave him extra motivation. He turned his head to look at her, and despite everything, there was something like warmth in his eyes. You fought beside us. You could have run. I keep having opportunities to run and not taking them. I'm beginning to think I don't want to. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and calloused, and somehow exactly what she needed. She laced her fingers through his and did not pull away. Stay, he said. When this is over. Stay. I don't know how to stay anywhere. Learn. His thumb traced across her knuckles, gentle despite the violence they had just survived. I'll teach you. The War Council convened 2 days later to plan their response. Kira attended not as a prisoner, but as an advisor, her knowledge of the Crimson Veil finally accepted as too valuable to dismiss. Sarah sat beside her, the two former assassins providing perspective that no one else could offer. We know where his main compound is, Kira said, pointing to a location on the map. The attack proves he's desperate. He threw everything he could at us and lost. If we strike now, while he's recovering, we can end this. And how do you propose we breach his defenses? Marcus Thane's voice was cold, but he was listening. That was more than he had done months ago. I'll go in first. The words came out before she could second-guess them. Not to infiltrate. Corvinus will know I've turned. Too many of his assassins saw me fighting beside your wolves. But he'll want to kill me personally. His pride demands it. She traced a path on the map. I walk in the front door, surrender myself, and demand to face him. He won't be able to resist the chance to execute his greatest failure himself. While his attention is fixed on me, your forces strike from these 3 positions. I'm not the infiltrator. I'm the distraction. The room erupted. Marcus called it suicide. Sarah called it reckless. Even the other advisors who had begun to accept Kira's presence protested the danger. You are pregnant, Kieran said, cutting through the noise. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of his authority. I will not send you into that monster's den as bait. You're not sending me. I'm choosing to go. Then I'm refusing to allow it. Kira stood, facing him across the table. This is my fight, Kieran. He made me what I am. He used my grief and my fear, and my need for purpose to turn me into a weapon. He planned my pregnancy, planned to take my child and raise it as another weapon. I need to face him. I need to end this myself. And if you die? If he kills you and the child you carry? Then you'll destroy him anyway, and my death will have meaning. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. I have spent my whole life being someone's instrument. First the Veil's, then yours. Let me do this on my own terms. Let me choose to be more than a weapon. The council watched them face off, tension crackling through the room. They all knew this was about more than strategy now. This was about everything that had built between the Alpha King and the assassin who should have been his enemy. Kieran broke first. Not with surrender, but with something harder. Then I'm coming with you, he said. If you're going to face him, you won't do it alone. 2 weeks later, Kira stood in the heart of the Crimson Veil's mountain compound, facing the man who had shaped her entire existence. Master Corvinus looked exactly as she remembered. White hair, kind eyes, the grandfatherly smile that had comforted her as a child. He sat in his study surrounded by books and artifacts, the picture of a wise elder rather than a monster. My dear girl, he said warmly, you've come home. I came to end this. His smile did not waver. I knew you would try. I've known since you failed to kill him that you were lost to me. The child in your belly changed you in ways I could not anticipate. He rose slowly, reaching for the cane he did not truly need. But you've always been clever, Kira. You must know I never intended to let you leave this room alive. Guards emerged from the shadows surrounding her, more than she had expected. Too many. You were my finest creation, Corvinus continued, circling closer. My masterpiece. I found you younger than the others, molded you more carefully, invested more in your training than any student before. And you threw it all away for what? A king who should have been your target? A child that will be born weak and defenseless? A child that will be born free, Kira said. Something neither of us ever were. Corvinus's kind expression flickered, revealing something cold beneath. Freedom is an illusion. We are all shaped by the wounds we carry. I have simply chosen to shape others with mine. Then you and I are different after all. Kira smiled, and it was not a kind smile. I'm choosing to break the cycle. She moved her hand to her chest, touching the pendant she wore against her skin. The signal. Outside, wolves began to howl. Kieran's forces struck the compound from 3 directions simultaneously, breaking through defenses that Kira had mapped during her supposed infiltration. She had not come to deceive Corvinus. She had come to distract him, to hold his attention while the true attack assembled. The guards around her moved to intercept, but Kira was already in motion. She fought with everything she had, knowing that she only needed to survive long enough for help to arrive. Her blades found throats and hearts. Her training turned against the people who had given it to her. Kieran reached her first, bursting through the study doors in full wolf form, massive and black and terrible. His guards followed, and the battle became a slaughter. When it was over, Corvinus lay against his desk with a sword through his chest, his own blade still clutched in his hand. He had not died easily, but he had died. That was all that mattered. Kira stood over him, breathing hard, covered in blood that was not hers. She waited to feel triumph. She waited to feel grief, or closure, or release. She felt nothing but emptiness. Kieran shifted back to human form and came to stand beside her. He did not speak. He did not need to. He simply stood there, a solid presence at her shoulder, while she looked at the man who had stolen her childhood and shaped her into a weapon. I thought I would feel more, she finally said. That's how it is. The first time you bury your past. He touched her arm, turning her gently away from the body. The empty space fills eventually, with better things. She looked up at him, at the scars and the gold eyes and the weight he carried that somehow seemed lighter now. What happens next? Whatever you want to happen. He cupped her face in his hands, tilting it toward his. I told you once to stay. I'm asking again. Not as your king, not as your captor. As someone who cannot imagine this kingdom without you in it. I was sent to kill you. I know. I'm carrying another man's child, a man who was part of the conspiracy to destroy you. I know that too, and I know that child is innocent of its father's sins, just as I was innocent of my grandfather's. And you still want me to stay? He answered by kissing her. It was soft at first, careful, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. She leaned into him instead, letting herself feel everything she had been denying for months. The attraction that had built during long nights of planning, the respect that had grown into something deeper, the desperate need for connection that she had suppressed her entire life. When they finally broke apart, she was crying. She did not remember the last time she had cried. Stay, he said again. Yes, she answered. 3 months later, Kira brought her daughter into the world in the same castle where she had once come to commit murder. The labor was long and difficult, but the healers were skilled, and Kieran never left her side. When she finally held the tiny, squalling infant in her arms, she understood for the first time what it meant to love something more than her own survival. "She's beautiful," Kieran said, his voice rough with emotion as he looked at the child who bore no trace of his blood but had already claimed his heart. "She needs a name," Kira said. She had thought about this for months, considered and rejected dozens of options, but looking at her daughter's face, she knew. "Elena, after my mother." "Elena," Kieran repeated, testing the name. "Elena Voss, if you'll allow it." Kira looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "You would give her your name?" "I would give her everything, both of you." He sat on the edge of the bed, one hand reaching out to gently touch the baby's cheek. Elena's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. "She will be my daughter in every way that matters. My heir, if she wants it. Or simply my child, free to choose her own path." "She's human," Kira reminded him. "The council will object. Then the council will learn to adapt. I didn't reform this kingdom's laws for nothing." His gold eyes met hers, full of a tenderness she had never expected to see directed at her. "Marry me, Kira. Not for politics or alliances or because I need an heir. Marry me because I love you, and I want to spend whatever years we have left building something better than what came before." She should have hesitated, should have questioned whether an assassin could ever truly become a queen, whether a woman with her past could ever deserve this future. But she had spent her whole life hesitating, questioning, holding back. She was done with that. "Yes," she said, and watched his face transform with joy. 6 months later, Kira stood in the garden of Blackstone Keep with Elena balanced on her hip, watching spring sunlight melt the last of the mountain snows. Beside her, Kieran traced lazy circles on her back, his touch warm and familiar, and entirely without the danger it had once promised. The simple gold band on her finger still felt new, even though they had been married for 2 months. "The council is finally accepting her," she said, watching Elena grab at a passing butterfly with chubby fingers. "Lord Ashford says the reforms have made it easier for the traditionalists to swallow. Edmund has been a strong advocate. Having your uncle on the council helps." Kieran drew her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And Elena has won over everyone she's met. Hard to argue against human rights when there's a baby drooling on your ceremonial robes." Kira laughed, a sound that still surprised her sometimes. She had not laughed much before. "She does have a talent for that." Elena burbled happily, as if agreeing with her mother's assessment. Her dark eyes, so like Kira's own, sparkled with innocent joy. She would never know the shadows that had shaped her mother's life. She would never be a weapon, never be manipulated, never be used. She would grow up loved and protected and free. That was worth everything. Worth the blood and the fear and the long journey from darkness into light. "I never thought I would have this," Kira said quietly. "A home, a family, a life that wasn't built on death. Neither did I. Not again." Kieran's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on Elena's back. "But here we are." Here they were. The assassin and the king, enemies who had become partners, partners who had become lovers, lovers who had become family. It was not a story either of them had expected. It was not a story that should have been possible. But standing in the spring garden with her husband's arms around her and their daughter babbling happily between them, Kira thought that impossible stories might be the only ones worth telling. She had been made to be a weapon. She had chosen to be something more. And in the end, that choice had given her everything she never knew she needed. A kingdom that would protect the vulnerable, a partner who saw her as an equal, a daughter who would grow up free, and a future where the shadows of the past could finally be left behind. It was more than enough. It was everything.